everyone. Konbanwa minasan. Good morning, konnichiwa to those joining from Japan. Thank you for attending this Japan-America Society program. U.S.-Japan-China Relations post-2020. I am the president of the Japan-America Society, Lizanne Gui. In the final month of 2020, as we continue to develop strategies for resilience and recovery, we are deeply appreciative of the presence of 3 experts to expand our understanding of the current situation between the US, Japan, and China, and what some implications might be for the global automobile industry. Prior to the presentations, in the spirit of the holidays and Bonenkai and year-end traditions, we will have some brief seasonal greetings. We are honored to have some special guest appearances from the Consul General tonight. And first, I'd like to introduce our chairman of the Japan-America Society, and then I'll return and lead off the presentation portion of the program. Society Chairman Dr. Michael Fetters is a professor of family medicine at the University of Michigan, where he directs the Japanese Family Health Program, providing culturally and linguistically competent care for the Japanese population residing in the Detroit metropolitan area. Dr. Fetters?
Thank you, Goin-san. Konbanwa, ohayo gozaimasu, yokoso. Welcome everyone to this presentation on U.S.-Japan-China relations. It's our great fortune to be able to welcome experts from Japan and from Washington, D.C., and from our very own Center for Automotive Research here in Ann Arbor, Michigan. We share our heartfelt thanks to the National Association of Japan-America Societies and to the sponsors, the Sasakawa Peace Foundation, Toyota, Yazaki, Inuak, Hirotech, and Suzuki Myers and Associates. Kokoro yori ore o moshiagemasu. I'm remembering that at this time last year, I expressed how happy I was to be celebrating the holidays, and as we always do with our members at Meadowbrook Hall, by the fireplace of that beautifully decorated historic estate house. The consuls General Nakagawa and Komartin are usually with us in that warm dining room. I am truly grateful they are also with us virtually tonight, and I will introduce them in a moment. Tonight, this is our year-end event, and I typically take this opportunity to briefly reflect on the Society's year of programs that brought us together. 2 of the 3 in-person events that were possible at the beginning of this year were consular efforts. The Society co-sponsored an excellent Japanese language speech contest with the Japanese consulate in February at Michigan State University to encourage study of Japanese at the high school and university levels. The last in-person major gathering was held for the Emperor's birthday reception at the Consul General's residence in February. As it became clear that the Society's 30th anniversary with the theme of the Tokyo Olympics and the Toyota Olympics Mobility Partnership would have to be celebrated 1 year late, just like the Tokyo Olympic Games, we turned our attention to online programs. The Society introduced a series on craftsmanship in production and the Japanese concept of takumi. Takumi is the Japanese tradition of production processes that have been practiced and carefully honed with the eventual adaptation of these traditional techniques to modern technology and quality manufacturing. One of the programs featured the local Detroit brand Shinola that presented the building of a luxury watch honoring the legendary architect Minoru Yamasaki, whose buildings are an important part of the Detroit cityscape. The series will continue at the beginning of 2021, and we look forward to finally celebrating the Society's 30th anniversary, and of course, to seeing the Olympic Games finally commence. Here in Michigan, the state, city, and local institutions are steadfast and looking forward to a harmonious future between the US and Japan. Michigan and Shiga have maintained their sister state connections for over 50 years now. The Japan Business Society of Detroit is already in its 47th year. The Motor Cities of Detroit and Toyota have celebrated 60 years of their sister city bond. We join tonight the network of 38 Japan America societies across the country in celebrating another year of friendly and constructive relationships with the Japanese people in our local communities. These associations are infused with meaning by those who formally institute them, and then by the stewardship of those who keep on supporting them and participating personally in the great friendship between our countries. Thank you all for your ongoing commitment. Domo arigatou gozaimasu. Now, I would like to introduce our dear friends, Consul General Tsutomu Nakagawa and Consul General Joe Comartin, who we are so pleased to have with us tonight. We will begin with Consul General Nakagawa and then hear from Consul General Comartin.
Thank you, Dr. Fetas. And good to see you again, Honorable Mr. Comartin, Consul General of Canada, and Kelly-san from Najas. And good evening, everyone. I am delighted to join all of you for this online event hosted by Japan America Society of Michigan and Southwestern Ontario. I would like to express my heartfelt congratulations on the Society's annual gala. In past years, we were able to gather in person at Meadowbrook Fall during the Christmas season at the end of the year. The delicious food and stimulating conversations enjoyed at Meadowbrook Fall, decorated with wonderful Christmas ornaments, remain one of my most unforgettable memories here in Michigan. I always appreciate the various activities that the Japan America Society organizes to promote mutual understanding between Michigan and Japan. I also recognize such activities would not be possible without the generous and continuous support from all the donors and sponsors. In particular, I would like to thank Sasakawa Peace Foundation, as well as Toyota, Yazaki, Inoak, Hirotech, and Suzuki Myers Association for their support for today's webinar. Indeed, 2020 has been a year of great challenges and uncertainty for all of us. We are still struggling and suffering in light of the worldwide pandemic. However, I strongly believe that next year, 2021, will surely be a year of recovery and new development. The automotive industry, one of my today's seminar's topics, has always been a driving force for the development of economy in Japan as well as United States. I am very much pleased with the latest conclusion of the new Mega Free Trade Agreement, RCEP, among East Asian countries. Also, I'm hoping for an early return of the United States to the TPP. I'd like to thank Professor Matsuda, Ms. Glaser, and Mr. Swiecki for kindly joining us today. It will be interesting to learn more from those experts. In closing, I wish all of you a safe and peaceful holiday season and a healthy and prosperous new year. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Consul General Nakagawa. It's wonderful to have you. I'll miss seeing you this year at the Meadowbrook Hall, and I'll miss Mrs. Nakagawa too. But your virtual presence here and your considerate words are most encouraging. And now, the US-Japan-China presentation today is made possible by the National Association of Japan America Societies. They are headquartered in Washington, D.C., and the president of the association, Peter Kelly, is here to describe the effort. Peter, the screen is yours.
Thank you, Lisanne and Dr. Fetters, and congratulations to the Japan-America Society of Michigan and Southwestern Ontario on your 30th anniversary. I know the celebration will be delayed, but I'm sure it will be fun. All of those of you who are joining from elsewhere, please note the wonderful logo of the Japan-America Society of Michigan and Southwestern Ontario, which is immediately behind Lisanne. It features the bridge between Detroit and Windsor and 3 flags, Canada, Japan, and the United States. A nice symbol of their efforts in that local area to promote people-to-people ties between Americans and Japanese and Canadians. I'm with the National Association of Japan-America Societies. As mentioned, there are 38 Japan-America Societies all around North America. Our efforts, NAJA's efforts, are to provide good Japan-related programming to our members. We run programs on public affairs, cultural, security, youth exchange, and business speaker series. Tonight is the Geostrategy in the Grassroots series. And this is the third of five such events at different Japan-America societies around North America. In each event, we invite an expert from the United States and from Japan to discuss the challenges, the geostrategic challenges in Asia that both the United States and Japan face. And there are many. These discussions happen nearly every week in Washington, D.C., where I'm based. But our objective in this series is to bring those discussions to cities outside of Washington, D.C. Our first 2 presentations were in Columbus, Ohio, and in St. Louis, and we're delighted to bring this series to the Detroit area tonight. We have 2 wonderful experts whom Lisanne will soon introduce, and I think the discussion will be a very interesting one. All of these events are organized by our local member societies, and that's why tonight's has a special feature on the impact on the automotive industry, and we'll hear from Bernard Swiecki. Our partner in this series is the Sasakawa Peace Foundation in Japan, a large Japanese foundation whose heart is in the public affairs and the geostrategic challenges. And we are grateful for their support and their partnership in bringing this program to Japan-America societies. Thank you. Lisanne?
Peter, thank you for including Michigan in this program. We're very happy to be here tonight. And now I will introduce our 3 speakers. I will introduce them all together in order of their appearance, and we will welcome questions in the chat area of the screen. And then we will address questions after all of the presentations have been made as time permits. So first we have Dr. Yasuhiro Matsuda. He's on the faculty of the University of Tokyo. He specializes in the political and diplomatic history of Asia, particularly Japan's foreign policy and security policy, as well as politics and foreign relations in China and Taiwan. For 16 years, he worked in Japan's National Institute for Defense Studies and the Japan Defense Agency, which is now the Ministry of Defense. Dr. Matsuda has served as a member of the Council on Security and Defense Capability in the New Era, an advisory group to the Prime Minister. Next will be Bonnie Glaser. She is a senior advisor at the Center for Strategic and International Studies, the nonprofit, nonpartisan policy research tank in Washington, D.C., where more than 100 experts focus their work on the future of national security. Within the center, Bonnie Glaser directs the China Power Project, which assesses China's power relative to other nations by its capabilities in several spheres, including military, economic, social, technological, and its international image and engagement. The think tank also analyzes China's foreign policy. The results are used to advise and inform policymakers, academics, industry, and the public. She's also been a consultant to US government agencies and has served on the Defense Department's Defense Policy Board China panel. Our third speaker, Bernard Swiecki, is the director of the Automotive Communities Partnership for the Center for Automotive Research in Ann Arbor, Michigan, and a senior automotive analyst in the center's Industry, Labor, and Economics group. The Center for Automotive Research is a nonprofit focused on the global automotive industry, the issues it faces, and its impact on the US economy and society. The center informs corporate leaders, policymakers, and the public. Bernard Swiecki's research is concentrated on automaker-supplier relationships, electric and alternative powertrain vehicles. He manages the center's analysis of vehicle sales, production, and segmentation data. He has also led many trade missions to China, Italy, India, and Russia. So we're going to begin tonight with Dr. Matsuda. Welcome, Professor.
Good evening. Let me express my deep gratitude to the host, Japan-American Society of Michigan and Southwestern Ontario, and in association with Sasakura Peace Foundation. I studied in California for half a year as an exchange student for 35 years ago. That's time flies. But I think that grassroots exchanges between US and Japan is so important. You know, looking back my own experience, I think that that time was quite precious, and it helped me a lot. So I really admire the grassroots exchanges done by the Japan-American Society. Well, today our discussion is going to go around Japan, US, and China. And I think that this is one of the perfect points, timing, to discuss this issue, because the leadership of both Japan and the United States have just changed. And the regional challenges are there, always in front of us. China is always there, North Korea is always there. So let me discuss the changes of the leadership first, then Japan's possible, the roles in the security first, and trade issue the second. Well, I think that the United States has just finished its election, and it seems like Mr. Biden is going to inaugurate in coming January. I think that this is almost a done deal, although there are a lot of topics there. But I think that basically the United States is wounded. I think that COVID-19's impact is so serious. So I think that U.S. in foreseeable future, I think that is not going to be that active in the international field. And that because COVID-19 is such a difficult challenge for everybody. And in Japan, we have a new administration, and Mr. Suga is not a prime minister like Mr. Abe. He is much more domestic-oriented politician, and I don't think that he is going to be very active in the international arena. So I think that both Japan and the United States are, being much more inward-looking. That's my prediction about the new administrations in the United States and Japan. For example, Japan's security challenges are deteriorating. It means growing. For example, the Senkaku related challenge is really serious. I think that China's frequency of accessing, Senkaku Islands are increasing, and their capability and the size of the ships, and also their armament of the ships. They're all developing very, very fast. I think that there is a long-term plan in China to weaken Japan's administration in the water. We hear a lot of, rumors that China is going to actually take over Senkaku Islands and so on. I think this situation is very, very when Prime Minister Suga and President-elect Biden had a telephone meeting, and Japan and mentioned about the U.S.-Japan security arrangement covers Senkaku Islands. And the Taiwan issue is also deteriorating, and but I don't think that China is going to actually use force against Taiwan within 2 years, because issue in 2022 when the 20th Party Congress will be held. So I think that the real challenge will start after his re-election. Because before the re-election, I think that Mr. Xi Jinping would not take such a big, gamble. But Xi Jinping is going to build up its military capability and try to, weaken the U.S.-Japan alliance by driving wedge between us. And DPRK is also a big issue, but let me skip because the time constraint. So what can Japan do, and what Japan should do? I think that Japan itself has to strengthen its defense capability. Japan's defense expenditure is less than 1% of its GDP. And Japan should make more efforts to strengthen its capability, because these issues are Japan's security. It's Japan's responsibility. But Japan's national debt is has piled up. It's the worst situation in the advanced nations. I think that Japan needs a national consensus to build up its defense capability. Abe administration could do that step by step, but Suga administration is so busy with dealing with the domestic issues so far. So I think it still needs more time. But instead, Japan can be a kind of a facilitator of reorganizing the international, alignment. For example, the United States has been a little bit, isolationistic, and now it is the best timing for Japan and other middle-sized, powers to put U.S., Europe, and Five Eyes and Quad or everything, then put them together and unite. And I think that Japan is the best position, one of the best positions to facilitate and realign these countries to a much more solid, the alliance. And the last one is trade. And Abe administration has achieved a great job, such as joining the CPTPP. Japan achieved the Japan-EU trade agreement, Japan-US, Japan-UK, and RCEP. I think that this is a very, glorious achievement. And Japan is in the center in all of these, trade agreement. And now U.S. is not likely to get back to TPP soon. Japan and other TPP member states are welcoming, U.S. back to TPP anytime soon. But, U.S. has its own domestic issue. So China is now trying to, benefit from this situation. China has just concluded RCEP, and Xi Jinping has just expressed his strong interest to join the TPP. I think the bar is very, very high. It takes years to negotiate, but this is China's strategy. And Chinese Foreign Minister Wang Yi has just visited Japan and agreed with Japan to set up the platform to discuss the food import, issue. And this is going to be a kind of a starting point of the negotiation of TPP. So I think that the great mega trade games are going on. I think that Japan should be very cautious, but welcoming and all the possible participants to join the TPP or create another FTA framework, maybe based on Quad or something, and try to engage both United States and India. Then possibly China. I think that this is going to be a very positive direction if Japan takes an initiative. Well, let me stop here. Thank you.
Well, thank you so much for inviting me to join the panel today. This is really such a wonderful event. Thank you to the Japan-American Society of Michigan and Southwestern Ontario for all the work that you do in promoting people-to-people ties and cultural events. And it's really wonderful. And I'm glad you have organized this conversation today on geopolitical issues. And there's so much to talk about. And thank you to Professor Matsuda for his erudite remarks. And I agree, of course, with everything he has said. I was asked to speak a little bit about the Biden administration and its foreign policy and U.S.-China relations. And I want to start by agreeing with Matsuda-san that the United States is likely to be somewhat internally focused for a while. This is a necessity. The new administration is going to have to do a better job in getting control of the spread of COVID-19, and vaccines will be arriving shortly. And then I think we will be turning our attention to resuscitating the American economy. But I don't think that this is going to last 4 years. I believe that 6 months from now, 8 months from now, we will be in a better place. And as we all know, President-elect Biden has spent so many years of his life focused on international affairs. And he headed the Foreign Affairs Committee in the Senate. He has been deeply engaged with foreign leaders all of his life. And so I think that he is keen to have an active foreign policy. And I believe that in particular, the Indo-Pacific will be a priority for the United States. And I think that the Biden administration's approach to the Indo-Pacific will build on some of the achievements of the past, but will also be different from the Trump administration's policies in a few very important ways. One is that alliances and partnerships will be central in the Biden administration's foreign policy. There is going to be, I think, a lot of listening done to our friends and our allies around the world. We want to hear what they have to say, what their concerns are, what they hope to see from the United States. I don't think this is going to be an administration that is going around arm twisting and telling the whole world that America must come first, because America's ills are deeply connected to the suffering and problems of the rest of the world. So I really think that that President-elect Biden is going to want to reach out to foreign leaders. And he has already named most of the members of his cabinet, and he has a very experienced team. Many of people who served in the Obama administration in senior positions who haven't been out of power for that long, and they're ready to hit the ground running. Secondly, I think the United States will strengthen participation in multilateral organizations. This is really essential. Some of the institutions that comprise the international order need to be updated, such as the World Trade Organization. The United States, I think, should return to the UN Human Rights Council and should work with other countries to reform the World Health Organization. So there is much work to be done in institutions, including in the Indo-Pacific region. I think the United States under the Biden administration will seek to compete more effectively with China, but to do so in ways that are less harmful to Americans who, as we know, have borne the brunt of the tariffs that have been imposed by the Trump administration. And in some ways, Trump administration policies have provoked confrontation with China. I think that has made our allies, including Japan, feel somewhat uneasy. Also, our friends in Southeast Asia. Most countries really just do not want to be forced to choose between the United States and China. All of these countries that sit close to China geographically, and even many of them that don't, have China as their top trading partner. Some of the countries in Southeast Asia are getting loans from China to build high-speed rail. So they really don't want to provoke a conflict, and they don't want to alienate China. Right now, U.S. strategy in the Indo-Pacific, it looks like President-elect Biden is calling it now the secure and prosperous Indo-Pacific strategy, which is a bit of a shift from the Trump administration's free and open Indo-Pacific strategy. But it's a minor difference. To me, the reformulation is intended, again, to be less confrontational and to leave space for a rule-abiding China to be included. And influencing and shaping China's policies is increasingly challenged. And Professor Matsuda talked about some of China's activity around the Senkakus. We, of course, also see the Chinese more actively in the South China Sea, using law enforcement ships to coerce other countries and prevent them from exploiting oil and gas. This is another challenge. And the military operations taking place in Taiwan's air defense identification zone, which are truly unprecedented. But to influence these policies, the United States just can't do this alone. We must work with Japan, our most important ally in the region, and of course, along with other like-minded countries. The G7 is going to remain, I think, important. The group of democracies that we're calling the D10 and other coalitions have to work together to achieve goals such as restoring Taiwan's observership in the World Health Assembly. Taiwan has been more effective in controlling the pandemic than most countries in the world, just over now 700 deaths. Just over 700 cases, excuse me. And I think only 7 deaths, very important distinction. They've been incredibly successful. Professor Matsuda also mentioned the Quad, and I think the Quad has seen very good momentum in the past couple of years, and there's great potential for its activities to be further developed. Japan, India, and Australia have all been targets of Chinese assertiveness in one way or another. India is being pressured militarily, suffered from Chinese aggression this past June along the border. Australia is the latest target of China's economic coercion, where the Chinese started by barring imports of barley and then moved on to many other products, including lobsters and wine. There's also potential for, I think, expansion to a Quad Plus. I envision a sort of a la carte approach in which there's various activities that are under the Quad Plus framework, and then like-minded countries have the opportunity to join the ones they feel most comfortable. And I think that might be a good approach to further expanding the Quad in the future. Regarding one of the questions that I was asked to address, how the alliance should respond to China's pressure on Taiwan, I believe that the US and Japan should signal their intent to strengthen support for Taiwan collectively and separately in ways that maybe they wouldn't do if China backs off of its air and naval activity. The US, in any case, must consider selling more weaponry to Taiwan, enable Taiwan to defend itself. This is something the Trump administration has actually achieved a great deal in this area. And the alliance should consider how we can signal our intent to defend Taiwan if China were to attack. And while I agree with Professor Matsuda-san that China is unlikely to attack Taiwan in the near term, I still think deterrence is eroding, and we need to do our utmost to bolster the credibility of first the United States, of course, coming to the defense of Taiwan, but also along with Japan's assistance, as Japan's interests are inextricably connected to Taiwan's security as well. The future trajectory of US-China bilateral relations depends on many factors, but I think one important factor is going to be Chinese behavior. It really isn't promising that Chinese officials keep saying that the United States is to blame for all of the problems in the bilateral relationship, and the ball is in the United States' court to fix them. But I think that this will change as the inauguration goes forward. I think that China is eager to stabilize relations. There is the hope to cooperate on issues like climate change and perhaps global health and pandemics, maybe North Korea and other non-proliferation issues. And so I think that this can help perhaps to mitigate tensions, but both countries are going to have to take some steps to improve the relationship. In the trade area, I expect negotiations will resume, and the goals are going to be very similar to those laid out by the Trump administration in its early years, protecting intellectual property, ending Chinese subsidies to its SOEs, ending forced technology transfer, and opening Chinese markets for American goods. I think it is unlikely that the US will lift the tariffs unilaterally. Rather, they might be rolled back as part of a deal in which China takes steps to address the unfair trade and economic relationship. President-elect Biden has said that joining multilateral agreements will not be on his agenda early on, but I want to join the chorus in saying that I hope that the United States does return and join the CPTPP, because I believe it's very much in our interest to make that a strategically important multilateral trade agreement that includes what was intended to be 40% of the world's GDP, but of course is still important even without the United States' participation. And we should give Tokyo enormous credit for taking that agreement across the finish line. So perhaps the United States will eventually find a way back. So I will end my comments there, and thank you again for inviting me, and happy holidays to all of you, and please stay safe.
All right, well, good morning, everyone. My name is Bernard Swiecki. I serve as the Director of the Automotive Communities Partnership at the Center for Automotive Research, where I also serve as the Assistant Director of the Business Group. And the Business Group really looks at trade, a lot of these subjects that we're going to be addressing here today. And before I get started, I'd just like to say very much thank you to the Japan America Society and all of the sponsors for inviting me to be a part of this panel. I've learned a lot already just from being here so far. I'd like to start by addressing a little bit about the current situation in the United States in terms of the automotive industry's dealing with the coronavirus pandemic. And it's interesting to me, it comes down to really a two-tiered impact. First we have the operational elements. And by that, I mean the disruption. If you're an automaker, whether you're American-based or Japanese-based or anywhere-based, your US operations are very much bound by the reality that you need people to come in and they need to work, they need to be available, and you need to keep them safe. And so now, with the infection rates in this country setting new records nearly every day, that is now at risk. In March, we really shut down production nearly completely in this country, and we really bounced back very nicely in the summertime. In fact, I believe in October, we actually made more vehicles than we did in October of last year. But now in December, we find ourselves in a really difficult period, and it may be the case that quite simply keeping the plants open is going to be a challenge. And I think a really good and a really timely example of that is the announcement from Ford that a very, very critical launch of the Bronco utility vehicle that was planned for spring of 2021 is now going to be in the summer of 2021. And they're indicating that this is caused by a supplier disruption related to the COVID pandemic. And what I'm wondering is, are we going to have these kinds of announcements coming from other automakers who are operating in the United States? That supply chain between these companies, it doesn't matter, who you are, it doesn't matter what your home country is. The fact is, it's very much a shared supply chain. And so if one company runs into problems, there's a good chance that the others will as well. Now, that's sort of it from the operational side, but let's also think about the total economic side, because this pandemic obviously has had a huge impact on the overall economy, because the pains that have hit the automotive industry have been felt as much, if not more so, in multiple other industries that are critical. And a lot of the service sector, restaurants, things like that are really taking a hit. And so you have, on the contrast, people with jobs like mine, where I can do my job from home. The pandemic really hasn't stopped me from doing work. And so, what we're talking about now is inequality, a recovery for one part of the economy, and those are the people with the office jobs, and real economic hardship on the other hand for the folks that have more traditional, more labor-intensive jobs. And so, that's how we can have a record-setting stock market at the same time that we have tremendous unemployment and a lot of folks being really subject to huge hardships right now. And it's interesting because it's a very sad story that's happening in the economy, but the automotive industry is at least partially insulated from these developments. And by that I mean we sell very expensive products, and odds are that the consumer to whom we're selling, which more and more the average household buying a car in the United States makes about $100,000 a year. And those are the folks who are not being hit as bad by the pandemic as the others are. And so we're selling more expensive vehicles, we're selling more utility vehicles, and that has sheltered the automotive industry from some of the harm of the pandemic. But I would say we're not out of the woods yet, not when we're setting new records almost on a daily basis. Now, those are those thoughts from an American perspective, but let's keep in mind that this is a global pandemic. It's a global industry, global supply chains. And so the United States is also not insulated from issues elsewhere. Specifically, right now we're seeing a lot of headlines about the COVID situation in Germany, right? So a global slowdown would be very, very much harmful to these companies doing business in America. Now, I'd like to also address, with the entrance of the Biden administration here coming up in January, an already complex trade environment is going to get a whole lot more interesting. And I've heard there's a podcast called Trade Talks, and they had one that I thought had a fantastic title. It's "Make Trade Boring Again," right? Where we don't have the same unpredictability and drama in the trade arena that we have had recently. So when it comes to trade and tariffs, I think, as the previous two speakers said very well, initially, I think the Biden administration will be focused more internally than externally, but that's only going to be temporary, right? Eventually, there is the fact that the United States has ongoing negotiations with multiple trade partners and trade groups that are going to resume, and are going to be handled, I think, just a little bit differently by the Biden administration than were handled by the Trump administration. And right now, USMCA is a very high priority, and the entrance into CPTPP, I think, is also something a lot of people would like to see. But in terms of the politics behind it, the Biden administration has such strong union support, and unions are in fact favors of USMCA, that to have those two pacts both influencing trade between the U.S. and Mexico and U.S. and Canada is problematic. So I think that's going to be a difficult thing to watch as it plays out. And the USMCA definitely is sort of the new highest priority, and it's one of those parts of the Trump administration's trade actions that is likely to live on under the Biden administration as well. I do expect an easing of the steel and aluminum tariffs that have been so unpopular. I keep hearing numbers, between 60 and 80, but basically in the United States, for every job tied to producing steel, we have between 60 and 80 jobs that are dependent on using steel as an input. And so essentially, likely for political reasons, these steel and aluminum oriented trade moves have helped one job for every 60 to 80 that they have hurt. And we've heard from automakers and suppliers that essentially those moves, for some of them, made the United States the most expensive place in the world where they were manufacturing. And so we do expect a little bit of that relief coming in. Now, we at the Center for Automotive Research have done an analysis where we've looked at various automotive imports, components that are used in US vehicle manufacturing coming in from all around the world. And we did this specifically looking at China, given all the trade tensions between the US and China under the Trump administration. And, when things really sort of hit their peak, essentially, yes, we did have a pulling back of many of these goods and their import levels coming in from China. Now, we did not necessarily see those goods simply now being produced in the United States. What happened is, when you look for many of those goods, they came in from other places that aren't China, where we don't have the same contentious trade environment. And in that dynamic, Mexico was the big winner, right? So we have to sort of, I think, in the future, think more holistically about these trade moves, because if the goal is to support American jobs, the idea of having something imported from one country being replaced by something imported from another doesn't do it. And I think under the Biden administration, we can expect a little bit more of an enlightened approach to all of this. Now, final subject that I'd like to touch on a little bit is you can't really talk about the global automotive industry right now without mentioning China. And the importance of China is tremendous, both as a source of inputs for not just American companies, but any company building vehicles in the United States, but also as a market for American-based automakers and suppliers doing business in China. So the short answer is it is very important and is going to stay important as the years go on. This is partially because of the huge emphasis on electrification in China. As the rest of the world moves in similar directions, that is going to be a key thing because, you know, a lot of these companies are fully global, and the investment necessary to develop these technologies for self-driving vehicles, electrified vehicles, battery electric vehicles is tremendous. And if you can spread those costs out, achieve economies of scale, sell globally, if that's your goal, China's the biggest market in the world, right? If economies of scale help you pay off all that development, you're going to have huge economies of scale if you can be successful in that market. So I think it is going to continue to be an enormous priority, and certainly for Ford and General Motors, a larger priority than, for example, Europe, as we well know. You know, the differences on some of these trade issues with China are much, much older than the Trump administration. They sort of hit their peak in terms of contention over these last 4 years. But, you know, there are things there that have been simmering for quite a long time. The Biden administration is certainly going to have its hands full. I've seen speculation now that Pete Buttigieg, who is a mayor from Indiana, is being talked about as the next US ambassador to China. And I don't know how that's going to go. That would be certainly a very interesting choice. And I think it's going to be a very hotly debated choice here in the United States. So with that, that concludes my comments. And once again, thank you very much. And I look forward to any questions.
Thank you so much, Bernard. Whoops. Thank you for all of those very interesting talks, and so appreciate everyone coming and being here for this. We have some questions that I was just looking at. Everyone seems to be interested in the Taiwan issue. We have a question from Yomiuri Shimbun from Kazuo Nagata, and he would like to know, is there any way to bring China closer to the nuclear arms dialogue like the one going on between the US and Russia?
So I can start with that. I think it's highly unlikely that China would agree to enter into nuclear arms control negotiations with the United States. Even under a new administration. China continues to have a very small number of nuclear warheads. The latest DoD report that came out in the United States says that it's under 300, maybe in the low 200s. And that pales by comparison to the much larger numbers that the United States and Russia have. Also, the Chinese are concerned about other issues, such as missile defense capabilities that the United States has. They don't want to be trapped into these kinds of discussions. They have long perceived arms control as something that's done between the United States and, of course, the former Soviet Union, but now Russia. So I know individuals in China who actually believe that arms control talks might be crafted in a way that could be beneficial to China. But I think that this is not going to resonate if this person or several people who hold that view try to promote that within the Chinese Communist Party. I doubt that this is an area where we will be able to make progress anytime soon.
Thank you. I think that pretty much answers this question about no first use nuclear policy. Should Japan feel uncomfortable against the backdrop of China military buildup, including a nuclear capability? I think that addresses the same question. Professor Matsuda, did you want to add anything?
Well, I think I totally agree with Bonnie. And, China's the number of China's nuclear warheads is so small. So China can just say that you have more, double-digit more. So you reduce. Then if U.S. actually reduces its nuclear warheads, that's going to be the big chance for China to increase it, right? So I don't think that the nuclear arms control is not likely to occur. I think that so far we need to, especially in Japan's case, Japan has to strengthen its defense capability, including non-nuclear, conventional, limited, offensive capability. But now the current administration is not going to get into this discussion. Abe was very bold, but Suga is very, cautious about this issue. He's not a gambler. That's the difference.
That's interesting. Thank you both. There's an automotive question for Mr. Swiecki. Did Mr. Swiecki say union supported or did not support USMCA?
So in general, of course there are exceptions, but in general, USMCA has had pretty broad support from unions.
Okay, and then the rest of the question was why?
Okay. It's interesting because I think a lot of it comes down to positioning. USMCA, I think, was positioned much more as a protective measure. And in the end, if you look at the structure, it's a more demanding content requirement in the USMCA than it was under NAFTA. But the math that we use to get there is a little bit easier, right? So the actual differences may not be, I think, as big as some of the folks who are supporting the USMCA but didn't NAFTA would believe. And so I think it's the way that it's been positioned as NAFTA didn't work. And so this is an improvement. And I think they don't realize that the improvement is actually fairly similar to the original. But that really has struck, I think, a very favorable tone in a lot of folks that you would think would have equal footing if you oppose one, you'll oppose the other, but it just simply hasn't played out that way. And I think it's caught a lot of folks by surprise that it really has happened this way.
Very interesting. Okay, good. That's a nice answer. There are a lot of questions about automotive electrification, the global trend, and how that affects the China market because of the large number of electric vehicles there.
Yeah, so it is huge, right? And essentially, for example, in the United States, the electrified portion of the overall vehicle market has been slow to grow. We peaked in 2013 and we actually had a few down years. And now over the last 2-3 years, we've really come, in relative terms, roaring back. But at the end of the day, it's only 5.1% of the market now. And that's if you count everything from the hybrids to the full battery electrics, everything. It's still only 5.1% of the market. But the key is that it's a growing share of the market. Right now you have vehicles, like the Toyota Sienna minivan, the Toyota Venza utility. Those are large 7-passenger vehicles, and you can only get them as a hybrid. So electrification is becoming sort of built in. And I think China plays a real role in helping you develop those technologies and spread the cost out over a larger market. It's also a huge source of inputs, regardless of that. But I think to really be a global automaker that's successful in your home market, some part of that Chinese market, it's going to be very helpful if you do have that, just to achieve those economies of scale, because the investment dollars going in are huge.
Okay. Well, thank you all very much. I know we're running out of time. So on behalf of Japan America Society, thank you very much to our speakers. We really appreciate you coming and talking to us here in Detroit virtually. I want to also go on to thank Consul General Nakagawa for his comments, and to all of our sponsors, the National Association, the Sasakawa Peace Foundation, and especially to our loyal corporate board members. I want to thank Toyota, Yazaki, Inowag, Hirotech, Suzuki Myers and Associates, and our individual sponsors as well. Thank you all. Arigato gozaimasu. Thank you for joining from Japan. It was wonderful to have so many people joining us from across the ocean. And thank you to our engineer who organized everything tonight. We are very appreciative of all of your time. Good night, everyone.